to your business. And here it is on an online survey. On a 0 to 10 scale, how likely is it that you would recommend us to a friend or colleague? And you could be rated from 0 to 10. And beside that, there's also a comment box. For those of you who want to ask your employees, you would rephrase the question slightly. Something like, on a 0 to 10 scale, how likely is it that you would recommend this company as a workplace to other people? It is a really simple methodology. It is actually that simple that it can be written on a napkin. Here it is. The first thing you have to do is to sort your customers or your employees. So they can rate you between 0 and 10. If they rate you between 0 and 6, those are the detractors. They're ready to leave your business at any time. If they rate you 7 and 8, they're passive satisfied. So they're not dissatisfied, but they're like, if I get a better offer or a better salary from a competitor, I don't mind switching. And finally, we got the promoters, and they rate you 9 and 10, and they are customers or employees for life. Besides that, we have to understand the root cause. Why are they unhappy, or why would they recommend our company? Then it has to be in real time. So, for example, if you want to survey your customers, it could be each time you deliver a product or service. That would be a touch point. That would be the time when you ask them the recommendation question. For your employees, it could be, for example, every month or every third month, for example. In that way, you will get constant feedback so you can act much faster. If you only survey your customers and employees, you cannot act fast enough. That can, so much can happen in your business during 1 year. So that's the why it's crucial to do it in real time. The good thing is we can automate that process, so you don't have to think about manually distributions. Our system can take care of that. And finally, we can calculate the Net Promoter Score. And why calculate the Net Promoter Score? Well, instead of having 3 numbers, the promoters, the passives, and the detractors, it's a lot easier just to have 1 number. And it's basically taking the amount of promoters minus the amount of detractors. So let's say you have 20% promoters and 40% detractors. 20 minus 40, that is minus 20. And that is not good. Minus 100 to 0, that's bad. 0 to 50, that's neutral ground. What you really have to aim for is a Net Promoter Score of at least 50. Having that just 1 number makes it really easy for you to benchmark your organization, track progress over time. Are you improving, declining? And you can even also start to compare yourself in a very easy way to a lot of other companies around the world. And if you want a world-class Net Promoter Score, you have to aim for the 70s. That is great. By the way, who do you think is the best Net Promoter Score performer in the world? What company is that? Well, I can tell you, it is Tesla. They have a Net Promoter Score of 97. It's insane. They basically don't have customers. They have fans. But for the rest of us, we should aim for the 70s. Here is again the Net Promoter Score on a napkin. It's super simple, and I think that's also why it is so successful in many companies, because it's so easy to implement, and it's so easy for the whole organization to understand. So now the question is, how many promoters do you have among your customers and employees? And I can tell you, it's probably not all of them that will promote your company. Here's an example from one of our customers. When they did the first survey, 34% of them were promoters, 48% passives, and 80% detractors. And we see that very often that the biggest group are the passive satisfied. And remember, they are not loyal. And if you are on the B2B market, they will leave your business within, normally after just 3 years. So here's another question. What is the lifetime value of your customers? Because when you know that, you can start to make some pretty neat calculations. Because when you know the lifetime value, you can also calculate the potential of moving some of the detractors and some of the passives and turn them into a promoter. Or for those of you who works with employees, how much does it cost to each time there is an employee turnover, each time we have to hire a new person? It's very, very expensive. So if you can minimize the detractors and the passives, what would that mean money-wise? I have a slide and I call it "Show me the money." This example is for customers only. In this case, we have 3 different companies with 3 different Net Promoter Scores. We got one with a minus 47, that's bad. Then a Net NPS of 18, which is like neutral. And then you have a Net Promoter Score company of 58, which is quite good. All 3 companies have 1,000 customers. So the first company with a Net Promoter Score of minus 47, let's say they have 210 promoters, 110 passes, and 680 detractors. So let's say half of the promoters, they will attract a new customer. So that's 105 new customers. But half of the detractors, you will lose them. So that's 304 customers lost. 340 minus 105, that's 235. Out of 1,000 customers, well, that is a decline of 23%. But if you had a Net Promoter Score of 18, it wouldn't be a decline anymore, then it would be a growth of 9%. And if you have a Net Promoter Score of 58, it will be a 29% growth. So why are those calculations so important? Why is it so important to show me the money? Well, who has the power in your company? Well, quite often it's the CFO, because he or she has all the Excel sheets. And what about us who talks about customer satisfaction or employee satisfaction? We often forget to bring the numbers to the table. And that is the reason why the rest of the management team, they will look at you a little bit like a puppy, like, well, yeah, it's nice and neat to have happy customers and happy employees, but it's not something we're gonna focus on that much. But if you can bring the numbers to the table, well, we can turn this puppy into something much more fearful with teeth. So we can create some balance. So the CFO can talk about the bottom line, and you can talk about the future growth of your company. So now I will give you the easy way to get more happy customers, especially how to convert those dissatisfied customers and dissatisfied employees into potentially customers and employees for life. I want to quote this guy, Morten Hubbe. He's the CEO of, I think, actually the biggest insurance company in Denmark. And he said, spending 5 minutes with a disappointed customer is better than, in ideas, well, it's better than 3 weeks with a management consultant. And I can tell you, it's also a lot cheaper. The value spending time with your customers, especially those who are dissatisfied, is very underestimated. The thing is, it's all about your relationships. I want to give you an example based on research done in US about medical doctors and their relationships with their patients. And in US, it's a lot easier. Well, it's easy to sue your medical doctor if you're not satisfied. So what do you think characterized those doctors who did not get sued? Any ideas? Well, I can tell you it is not the quality of the treatment. I know this is quite counterintuitive. Here are the characteristics of the doctors who did not get sued. They spend more time on their patients. They ask more questions. They use more humor. They are more interested. And they are better at remembering their patients. This is so underestimated in companies out there, that the quality of the relationship is extremely important. So if you can start to spend more time with your customers and your employees, I can guarantee that you will have more happy and loyal customers and employees. Here's another stat from top study on why customers leave your business. 68% of customers still leave a business because they believe you don't care about them. 68%. It's not the product, it's not the price. I don't have the stats for employees, but I would bet that it's pretty much the same. So how can we make them smile again? Especially our dissatisfied customers and dissatisfied employees. It's not rocket science, it's really easy. Basically, say hello to them. And if you have dissatisfied customers, call them or meet them, and it does not hurt. A lot of companies, they come to me and say, well, we're a little bit afraid of calling them because they might be angry and shout at us. But you will be surprised if you call a dissatisfied customer, because they will say, wow, you actually listened to me and now you want to talk to me. It's very, very effective. Besides that, I can really recommend to shut up and listen. Don't start to defend your business. Just listen, because your customers and your employees, they have so many insights you couldn't dream of. Just doing 1 and 2, you can deal with dissatisfied customers and employees and turn them around. I don't say that they will become customers or employees for life, but at least they will have turned into what we can call passive satisfied. But of course, if you also do something about it, fix the problem, compensate, well, then we might create a customer or employee for life. This guy, he's smiling. It's one of our customers, and he's smiling despite he's pointing at our dashboard that shows a dissatisfied customer, because he understands that a complaint is a gift. So when he got a dissatisfied customer, he called the dissatisfied customer and had a good conversation with that customer and started to listen and understood that they could improve the product in 2 different ways. So he turned the dissatisfied customer happy again, and he created a better product. So both the customer and this company here, they're both happy now. So it is actually that easy. By the way, that story was shared on LinkedIn. So our customer, he shared it on LinkedIn and showed all his customers and potential customers, hey, we have a dissatisfied customer. The thing is, people out there, they don't really care if you have a dissatisfied customer, because, you know, no one is perfect, but they really care whether or not you deal with it. So a complaint is a gift. By the way, this dashboard here is our dashboard on a TV screen. So they have that in the office. So it's very transparent for them. And as you might see, you know, it's pointing at May, and you have April, and then you have March. That is the cool thing about having feedback in real time, that it's really easy for you to track progress over time. In our dashboard, you can also benchmark your organization and start to figure out, maybe if we are in different countries or have different departments, we might figure out that, some of the departments or countries have a lower experience, customer experience or employee experience compared to other departments or markets. I can tell you lots of other companies, when they did the first survey, they were surprised to figure out, like, for example, I remember we had a customer, and they are both in Denmark and Sweden, and the customers in Sweden were significantly less satisfied than the customers in Denmark. It's an eye-opener, and it's something you can act on. You know, let's focus on Sweden. One of our other customers said, to our surprise, NPS and ENPS differ a lot in our benchmarks. This is a cool big data analytics you can do in our dashboard. You can also use our word count. Basically, what it does is really simple but quite effective. You can take all the dissatisfied customers, all employees, and check out what kind of words, what kind of trending words are there. And I can tell you, among many customers, it's often the service that is the reason why they're dissatisfied. But we had one customer that told us, we thought our customers chose us because of our professionalism. But what isn't given is the good customer experience. It's a law firm, by the way. And they thought, well, of course they will choose us because of our professionalism, but if you should choose a law firm, you would expect that, right? But what isn't given is good customer service. So that was also an eye-opener for them. Now I want to share some best practice, some learnings from the most recommended companies. We did an award last year, and I can tell you the winner had a Net Promoter Score of 70. But what is much more impressive is their employee Net Promoter Score, that is 85. And that really tells us that if you want happy customers, you also need happy employees. By the way, it's a bank. So I don't have much time to give you all the learnings, but I'll focus on the most, I would say, the most important learning from the most recommended companies. And it is, involve your employees, train your employees, reward your employees. This is quite funny because we're talking a lot about customer experience, but we need our employees in order to create a great customer experience, because they need to know what is the difference between a passive satisfied customer and an ambassador and a promoter. You need to teach them how to create a wow experience. Just like me in the cafe, you had to teach your staff on how to deal with me as a dissatisfied customer. And I see a lot of companies, they reward their employees in a, what I would say, an old school way. They only reward them on new biz. The most successful companies, the most recommended companies, they also reward their employees based on how well they perform customer experience-wise. The way you treat your employees is the way they will treat your customers. Who said that, by the way? Richard Branson. This is an interesting research done by Copenhagen Business School. A 2% increased employee loyalty will result in a 2.5 increased customer loyalty. That again will result in a 6.5% increased revenue. So if you want to increase your revenue, well, start with your employees. And I have a great offer for all of you who's attending this webinar, where we actually want to offer our employee Net Promoter Score feedback tracking tool for free. You can ask all your employees. Besides that, we'll offer you a free PDF guide, our culture book, also as a PDF. And finally, we'll offer a free 30-minute phone consultation with one of our employee NPS experts, where we're going to review your employee feedback and actually give you some ideas on how you can improve your employee loyalty. So if you want all that, if you want it today, well, then write me. My email address is here on the screen. It is christian@relationwise.com. I will send you all the material, and then we can have a chat about how we could send out your first employee survey, for example, next week or in a couple of weeks from now. Yes, Michael, I think it is time for a Q&A now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian. I'm just gonna get the Q&A ready, and to all of you listening, if you have any questions at all pertaining to what Christian spoke about, or even more general questions related to customer loyalty, customer satisfaction, and such, just please go ahead and ask the questions or comments, or put your comments in the chat box, and then we will do our best to answer them. So I'm just getting the application ready here, and so we had a question from my friend Tyrone Tellis, and Tyrone asked, hold on, I just need to find it here in the chat box. And we also have a question from Liz Muiza. Okay, so this comes in two parts, Christian. Tyrone asks, what about those who don't complain? And then he gives a little bit more explanation here. The silent customers who tells people your brand is no good, but doesn't tell you. How to address those?
Yeah. Well, basically, a really good question, because it's related to the response rate. So, what is a good response rate? Or I would phrase it another way. What defines a good response rate? Well, first of all, it's the length of the survey, and that's why it's so cool with the Net Promoter Score, because basically it's just one question and one comment box. People, they just hate big surveys. So if you send out 10, 20, 30 questions, and I see that quite often, of course they prefer to talk behind your back, because it's just too difficult to tell you. The other thing is the relationship you have with your customers. Let's say you meet a stranger on the streets, and who wants your opinion about something. Well, then you don't have much time. But if it's one of your friends or your family, well, then you have plenty of time. And it's the exact same thing that goes with your customers. So if you have a strong relationship with them, well, they will be more happy to help you and give their opinion. So if you have a low response rate and you don't have good relations with your customers, well, what you could do is to use our, how can I explain that? So the thing is about our solution is that for those who didn't respond to the survey, will be, after, for example, a week or two, be sent over to another part of our system where you can call them, or let someone else call them. It's, of course, this is very effective on the B2B market, not so much on the B2C market. But on the B2C market, you often have a quite big volume. And the thing is, and that's the beauty of stats, you don't need all of them to reply on your NPS question. Because if you just have a sample, that will tell something about the whole population. So if you can just start to get some answers and start to do something about that, that will also affect the whole population. So I hope that was an answer enough for that question.
We have another question coming from, I think it's Lisa Muiza, but I think it goes along the same line that she asked, what's the best way to get feedback from your customers when they don't complain, or the complaint doesn't reach you directly? So would you say that question is more or less answered?
Yeah. Can you ask her if she's on the B2B or B2C markets?
Muisa, Liz, can you explain if you're on B2B, if you're selling to businesses or to consumers? Okay, we're just waiting for that, and
we can take the next question. Yeah,
we're doing that. Yeah, we're getting and we have a number of questions coming in, and I just want to tell all of you that I am spotting all of your questions. We're just taking them one by one. But Christian, if you don't mind, can I just comment on Tyrone's question as well as this one? I
Sure.
think all of this really starts by strategizing. In other words, have a solid strategy for how you want to solicit feedback from customers and other constituents. And then understand that you are in an omnichannel environment, whether you're in B2B or B2C, which means the NPS score is not probably something that can stand alone. I think you need to also understand how do you solicit feedback and respond to feedback in your various social channels and such as well. I think if you address it from that point of view, you will be able to limit the number of people who don't actually want to give you feedback or who don't see an opportunity to get you feedback as well. So we have an interesting question here from Patrick Muhuzi. Let me just bring that up. What are the best ways to treat and retain high-value customers?
Well, pretty much like medical doctors and their patients. Spend more time with them. And of course, also listen to your promoters. Because if you start to check out their comments, why do they recommend you? You can start to figure out the loyalty drivers. Do they recommend you because of your staff, because of the quality of your product, or whatever it could be? So it's a lot about trying to ask or try to figure out, so how come some of your customers will recommend you, and start to do more of that. That's a good way to start. And then again, spend more time with your customers, just like the medical doctors. When they spend more time with their patients and show more interest, that's a great way to create customers for life.
Patrick, let us know if that gave you some ideas. So we have another question here, which is actually it's also in two parts. Let me give you the first part first. One sec. So Sean Hansen asked, could you give us a short intro to the eNPS? I think perhaps what Sean means is to see an actual, some screenshots or similar from the actual platform. Because the other question that Sean asked is this: you talked about real-time surveys, so should the eNPS be simplified to, for example, 4 smileys? So I don't know, Christian, if you are able to pull up your test solution, or
well, basically it's like I showed you before. Let me find it. That's the beauty actually of the Net Promoter Score for customers and the employee Net Promoter Score. That it's the same methodology. So it is like what you see here on the screen. It should be from 0 to 10. And why not 4 smileys? Well, then we have to go back to what Fred Weichelt tries to tell us, because he actually did a quite big research to find out what's the best way we can ask our customers. And he just figured out it is the recommendation question. It has to go from 0 to 10, not 0 to 4. And through his research, he just figured out, well, if customers rate you between 0 and 6, they are about to leave your business. All your employees, they're about to leave your business. If they rate you 7, 8, they are passive satisfied. And you have to be rated 9 or 10. I don't say that this is the perfect model. Nothing is. But it's the best model we have. So of course, you can have customers that will rate you 7 and still leave you. Or employees who rate you 7 and still stick to you, for example. But it's like the best indicator we got. And all the feedback you get from this survey. So like I told you, you just have to slightly rephrase it. Instead you will say something like, on a 0 to 10 scale, how likely is it that you will recommend our company as a workplace to other people? And when your employees, they fill in the question, well, you will start to see slides like this, where you can see how many promoters do we have among our employees, how many passes, and how many detractors. And of course, also use our other dashboards like if you are in if you have employees in different countries or departments, you can benchmark them, and of course you can also check their comments. You cannot track who said what. So of course you can track your customer feedback, but with the employees, they can answer the survey without you knowing who it was, because then you will get better answers.
So I hope that made sense. But Christian, if anyone wanted you to just show them how this works on a one-to-one basis, would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, sure. So excellent, that is part of my free offer here. So if you just write me, then we can schedule another Skype meeting or a phone meeting where I can show you my screen and show you how it works. So I'll go in more details for a potential meeting.
Excellent. So that's an offer for everyone. If you contact Christian at christian@relationwise.com, I'll just put the email address directly here in the chat box. Then you have an opportunity to get all of that, plus an introduction to how this actually works. We do have another question, two other questions. The first one, let me just mark them as questions here so I can publish them. It's a longer one. Do you guys see it? I have worked in the internet industry for more than 3 years. I would always fear to pick customer calls whenever we had a downtime because I knew they would always shout back and complain, but I would wait after I have the exact answer, call back and give them the ETA, estimated time of arrival, and they would most understand. So I believe customer experience is key, even more than the product or services being sold. My customers needed to know that they could rely on me in case they needed support. Your comment, Christian?
Yeah, that's a good example. So it has nothing. It has very little to do with your product or how you price your product. Of course, it has to be a good product, and you have to price it in a fair way compared to your competitors. But what really matters today, if you want to differentiate with the rest of the marketplace, is your customer service and your customer experience. So, and that is only through your employees you can offer a great service and a great customer experience.
Exactly. And then the last question for now, at least, a good one from Trine Winkel, who asks, how did NPS, is it as a what detracted from what?
Okay, so let me go back to this slide here. So basically what you do, maybe I think it'll be easier to show this one here. So basically it's the net promoter score, so it's the net share of your promoters. So you just take the amount of promoters minus the amount of detractors, and that is 16. It's that easy.
Did that make sense, Trine Winkel? Excellent, good. So we have another question here, which I guess relates to what we've already spoken about and what you've offered, which is like this. Do you have that's Sean Hansen asking again, do you have a presentation of how it looks seen from both customer and employee side as well as the feedback view?
So please help me here, Michael. So he means the dashboard, how the data is presented?
No, I think it's, so let's say you're an employee and now you get the request to provide feedback. What does that exactly look like? So that would be the emails being sent, for example. How does that look like?
Yeah. I think, email me and I'll send you some examples. I think that will be, that's the best way. I can tell you that it can be done in 2 different ways. So, of course, before people, they see this question, they'll either get an email or a text on their phone. So it depends on what kind of business, or I would say it depends on what kind of customers you have, what is best. In most cases, I would say email is the best because you get better comments. But for some businesses, it's better with a phone survey through the phone, where you will get a link on your phone, and when you click on the link, you will see the question here. But send me an email, and I will send you some more screenshots.
That is very excellent. Thank you so much for that. I have already put Christian's email in the chat box. When we send the follow-up recording, as I promised, we will also include Christian's details just in case. So unless there are other questions or comments, we've come to the end of this webinar. So I'll just give you a moment to think about whether you do have other questions or comments. And while you're thinking, first of all, I want to thank you for attending today, and I must apologize that I made a terrible mistake of not double checking all the links in the emails, and shouldn't happen for someone with my experience, but it did. I do apologize for all the confusion, and I also apologize to all the people who are not here as a result of that. But as I mentioned, we will get you the recording. I know some people had some sound issues as well, and they should be there won't be any sound issues when you listen back to the recording. So we do have the very last question before we close the webinar, and it's coming up on the screen now. A very good question also, and this is from Patrick Muhosi. Does the segmentation model to treat customers depending from what segment they are from really work? Christian.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Michael. Maybe you can help me here, if you can try to.
So I think what Patrick, please let us know in the chat box if we don't get this right. I think what Patrick is referring to is, you showed an example where you compared different countries and how their NPS score was. And I think you had Denmark on top. I wonder why. And then you had Sweden and so on. And the same can, of course, be done for other types of segments, whether that be product segments or other specific customer segments and so on. So I guess what Patrick, what you're asking here, please correct us if we're wrong, is this a good way to do it? Is that a reliable way to compare? Are we comparing apples and apples, or apples and oranges, or what's going on?
Yeah. Well, of course, there has to be. Sorry?
Go ahead. No, I'd say the second part is the differentiation, right? The differentiated treatment between different customer segments.
Okay, yeah, that one. Got it. Well, first of all, when you benchmark, you, of course, before you make any decisions, you have to definitely check out how many responses are the data based on. So maybe you have a lot of respondents for Denmark, but not that many for Sweden. So as a rule of thumb, you have at least need 30 respondents for example, a country, or it could be a market or a department, before you can make any judgment. I would prefer more, but let's say a minimum as a rule of thumb is 30. I see quite many companies that make too quick judgments based on very few respondents. So that is definitely the first thing you have to look at. Do we have enough stats before we actually can decide Denmark is performing better than Sweden, as in this example? And beside that, of course, you also have to go deep down in your data. For example, as you can see on the screen, next to Denmark and Sweden, Norway, there's an arrow. So you can, by clicking that one, you can check out more results from, for example, Sweden and Norway, and read those results. And of course, you also have to do that before before you make any judgments. Your final question about segmenting your customers, and I assume you mean like the classical way to segment your customers are A, B, C customers. A customers are our most valuable customers. And I think that is a great thing to do, because we probably all have limited resources, so it'll be a good way to focus your energy on your most valued customers. And it often follows the 20-80% rule, that 20% of our customers stands for 80% of our revenue. So of course focus on them, on those. And especially if you're on the B2B market, you should get a response rate of 100% or close to 100% for your most important customers. And why? Well, because you cannot afford to not know what one of your most important customers, how they feel. So that's why it's very important that if you don't get a 100% response rate when you survey them online, well, follow up on phone. You can actually let Relationwise and one of our partners call them on your behalf, and it's a great way to boost the response rate, and especially for those that will be very valuable for you.
Very good.
I hope that was answered.
Yes, I think what's really interesting about the questions here, Christian, I think you'll agree, is that the questions that we have had does not only pertain to how do you actually solicit feedback and how do you report on that feedback, but it seems to me there's a lot of questions around the whole customer strategy part, right? All of the decisions that one has to make. And I think Patrick's last comment here, in terms of where he says not only in terms of products tailored to a given segment, but also how you take care of them, I think also confirms that, right? So perhaps one day we should do another webinar where we talk about how you create a customer strategy, because obviously that's a big part of this, right? And I think that's one of the reasons you must have experienced this as well, having worked in this space so many years, that a lot of companies don't measure, not because they don't care, but probably because they don't have a strategy for how they actually treat their customers.
True. You know, there are many things you can do working with customer experience, and actually I see the mistake that companies, when they start up a customer experience program, that they want too much, you know, and it's really easy when you are at the whiteboard to make all kind of plans and strategies, but I want to repeat Morten Hube, this guy here. You know, the first thing you can do, and you can do that today, it is spending 5 minutes with a dissatisfied customer. That would be the first thing you can do. And when you have done that, and you have a process for that, and you know you contact those dissatisfied customers within reasonable time, just like me in the cafe. I only had to wait 2 hours before the reply. If I had to wait 2 weeks, it would have been another story, right? So I would say this is like the cornerstone of a customer experience program. Start with that, spending more time with your dissatisfied customers, and make it really simple for you to get started. And when you have that up running, you know, you can do it more advanced, and you can start to do benchmark and whatever you would like to do. But start small, learn, and then scale up.